And welcome in to another episode of the Young Dad Podcast. I'm your host, Jay. Super excited to be with you. Whether you're outside mowing the lawn, maybe you're grilling up some burgers and dogs, or maybe you're inside changing diapers, or maybe you finally got a moment to lay down, sit back, relax, kick your feet up, and listen to your favorite podcast. Whatever you're doing, wherever you're at, whatever you're thinking about right now, thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. Super excited to be with you. Super excited to be doing this episode. Super excited to have Rella here with me. Rella, how are you doing today?
I'm so excited to be here, and I am doing pretty great. Very excited.
I'm super excited to have you. Before I introduce you a little bit more to all the listeners and to the people and all things like that, I'm going to take care of some business, take care of a little bit of housekeeping, clean up the house a little bit, and just take care of some of that business. So business starts out here at the top. Want to shout out, who am I trying to shout out here? Our partners of the podcast. That's who I'm trying to shout out here. Trying to think of words. I've been sitting in training for 2 days at work, so my brain is literal mush from reading just jargon and documents and procedures and policies and how you should do things. And it's just been so much fun the last couple of days at work. But besides that, shout out the partners of our podcast. You heard that beat, the opening beat. The Podbeat app is who provides us our opening and closing beats to the podcast. They're a great partner of the podcast. They take your podcast and turn it into a musical experience. Whether you're a gym rat or you like a nice little beat as you mellow out and listen to your podcast laying down in bed or whatever it is in between that you like to do, Podbeat has you covered. It can enhance your audiobook experience and enhances your Podbeat experience by letting you allow a beat to either of those platforms. So it's fantastic. Check them out. In addition, check out our other partners of the podcast. The Podbeat app is one of them, but also For Fathers Apparel, Dad Bod Apparel, the June app, JOON, which I'll talk about later. I love to talk about them toward the end of the podcast. And yeah, also Dr. Anthony Harrell, check him out as well. He's my coach, my trainer, and I would love if you worked with him as well. He's got me right. He can do the same for you. So enough of the business. I think that's everything I wanted to cover. So without further ado, a little bit about Rella here. Rella, you, on your platform and what you do, you're an author. You're a podcast host, content creator, but of course, you're a mother first. You promote literacy, movement, and comprehension on your children's literature platforms, such as Rella B. That's kind of the quick elevator pitch version of Rella, who you are and what you do. So please tell us a little bit more about you, a little bit more about your authorness, and this children's literacy that you talk about as well.
Thanks so much. So my background and pure passion was education, and I worked in Washoe County School District for a while. And I was really disenfranchised when I went to a conference, and they told me that by third grade, literacy scores are correlations to if kids, or not if kids will end up in prison, but they're directly correlated to like imprisonment rates, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And that broke my heart. And I was like, okay, so if you know that information to be true, then there should be heavier interventions when it comes to increasing literacy rates. And
You
I
would
think
think
part of
so,
it
right?
is, I'm sorry?
You would think so, that there
Right.
would be an increased intervention. Okay, we know this happens. We literally know exactly when this starts. We literally know exactly when this happens, but we have this whole prison industrial complex that we have to keep going because it makes us a lot of money and it allows us to move a lot of money in a lot of special ways. So no, we got to keep this going. Got to keep this going. But anyways, that's that. Anyways, continue.
Yeah, no, I mean, that is what propelled me on this journey, basically, because I do feel like it's almost they're failing children by not giving them more intervention. And then they are just feeding that beast that's privatized and does make a lot of money. It's very sad.
Yeah, no, it's terrible. And what a topic to kick off with, right? But it's so important, there, especially for boys, right? There's a massive drop off around the third grade to when boys just stop picking up books. It's easy when they're little to get them to pick up books. Easier when they're little. When I was a little kid, I loved books. Loved books all the way through elementary school up until middle school. I don't know what it was that happened in middle school for me, but I just hated books. Like, I didn't hate them. I just had such a strong dislike for physical books. I don't know how it happened, whether it was the peer pressure. It's not that I couldn't read. I read at 2 grade levels ahead of where I was because I always had books in my hands growing up. My great aunt's a librarian, so books were always a thing I had. I always had so many books growing up in the home. I loved reading books. That's when we had the AR program in schools, where we would take like AR quizzes and get like AR points, and then we would get like little dog tags, and it was so cool because you get this big recognition in front of your class in school if you're like top of the class and all this, and it was so fun. It was great to be recognized at that level. It was huge for promoting like literacy, like among like my same age peers and things like that. It was awesome. But I'm not sure what happened in middle school, whether that just stopped happening or we didn't have that as an option anymore, or if books just became like boring to me, or if I was just too cool for books. Probably because I thought it was too cool for like an actual book. And now I see that as an adult, like I have such a hard time, like even going through course materials or the last couple of days at work, just engaging with a physical like text, like paper text or a physical text, or reading something for a long period of time. I just find myself disengaging super quickly. It's not that I don't understand it. I get the material, I can read the material, I comprehend the material. None of that's a question or the issue. It's just like I just don't have an interest in it. There's zero interest in this. So I'm not sure where that all dipped off, but yeah, it's definitely a problem because that's what it's turned into for me, to where it's like I need audio. Like I need audiobooks. I'm not going to pick up a real book. I'll have all the intentions. I'll take my kids to the library. I'll grab myself a couple books. Heck, I have a stack of 4 books in my room right now that I picked up from the library that I had intentions on reading. I haven't touched them. So
Is it
yeah,
is it the same for you? Because I do love audiobooks, but I consider audiobooks to be reading still.
same. Yeah.
But do you listen on like 2x speed? Because I can listen a lot faster than I can read. So I'll listen to
Ye-
stuff really fast.
I usually listen to like my podcasts and stuff on like 1.25 or 1.5, just because like if it's going too fast and I want to still take in like the content more or less. I still want to take in like the speed, and I still want to be able to be doing something else too. I've combined type ADHD, so I like to be multitasking, keeping multiple senses going at the same time. So keeping like my sense of like hearing going while also trying to keep my brain going while also typing and working at the same time, whether that's charting or documentation or something else. So I try to be multitasking with that audio stimulation at the same time.
Okay, I get it. Yeah, but I mean, as long as you're consuming the type of content that you want, it's still great. I feel like kids kind of lose the enjoyment of stories or learning, reading, anything like that. So that's why I promote it. I just want kids to love to read and love to consume content, continue to learn, practice their comprehension skills. And then movement, I feel like, is not encouraged in enough content. There's not a lot of like YouTube videos that are telling your kids, like, hey, get up, let's do a stretch really quick, and then let's sit down for a story. Because kids can get really sedentary, especially if their parents are like working from home or if they're busy making dinner. Lots of times they may be playing outside, but they could just be inside relaxing too.
Yeah, no, 100%. Those two things go hand in hand, really. When it comes to the comprehension aspect of it and the movement part of it, because you have to keep the blood like circulating, right? You have to keep the blood circulating to the brain. I think that's a big part of it for me, was around that age when I stopped picking up physical books, was because I needed more like movement. Boys typically
Mm,
that have ADHD need more large motor movements. They need more big movements, running, jumping up and down, just moving the body, things like that, to keep their energy burning, right? So without that, because when you're reading, you're just kind of stuck. So telling a little boy who has ADHD of any type to sit down and read is, bless your soul. Your intentions mean well, but they're not there. So it's super important, that movement aspect of it. But that movement helps with the comprehension of it, right? To be able to move your body so that you can get out, for littles to get their wiggles out, right? So that they
right.
can focus and hone in on the story, or hone in on the words, or how the words are being said, or the all the literacy aspects, enunciation, pronunciation, sound, pictures, things like that, and be able to put the story together. But how important is that literacy? So after the 3rd grade, that statistic falls off. You were working in education.
No, I work for the technology department.
Okay? Okay. So after we know the statistic good and well. The literacy falls off. Direct correlation for kind of where some of these kids may end up in life. Correlation isn't always causation and vice versa, but if there's a correlation and it's well documented, it makes sense, you know? Uh, so how important is that literacy and unlocking that literacy for our children?
It's vital. Because after 3rd grade, they're not really teaching kids how to read anymore. So once you get to 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, and beyond, how are you supposed to learn anything else when you're taking home 5 different textbooks or you have to learn things online by yourself? There's a lot of different ways of learning or where people are learning is online a lot now. So even when it comes to taking a course, like you said, for your business or for your job, how well are you gonna be able to execute that if it's really hard for you to take in the information?
No, that's a good point. I never really thought about that because I mean, it was different for us growing up, right? Like books were cool. Well, I mean, all we had was books. We only had books. But now there's so many aspects when it comes to books. It's hard. You have to vet the book. You have to make sure the book is reliable and make sure it has the right information, make sure it has accurate information. And I'm sure you've noticed it, but some of the books that are published today, even about like maybe Abraham Lincoln or George Washington or Mount Rushmore or these very historical things that only have one story, the story's not the same. It's changed. There's things left out. There's things omitted from a lot of these different stories, and it's very concerning because we're leaving out parts of history. We're leaving out these crucial parts that you have to go down rabbit holes on YouTube to find. That you have to go and look at a quote unquote banned book. I would love to get your thoughts on that later on all these banned books because I definitely have my thoughts as well. But there's great information in books, right? All we had was books. We had books, we had streetlights, and we had water hoses. So we didn't have all the technology. We didn't have access to hundreds of different articles and sources and resources. But if you're not understanding what you're reading and comprehending what you're reading, you're gonna miss the bigger pictures of all these things. You're gonna miss the stories being told. You're gonna miss the history. You're gonna miss the causes that caused these historical events to happen. You're gonna miss why World War II happened, or why the Civil War happened, or why these different world conflicts happen, or why a conflict happened here, or why this thing happened here, or why this thing happened here, or why these things happened in the country. And because parts are omitted and stories change over time. It's like telephone. When it starts at the one person and then gets interpreted over time, passed down generation to generation, things get lost in that translation. And you only can comprehend what you can comprehend. And if that comprehension stops after 3rd grade, then where are kids left after that? I mean, they're 8, 9 years old.
Yes.
So
And that's really hard too, because if you don't have that comprehension, sometimes that bleeds into not having the critical thinking skills to be like, oh, well, I'm reading this, but I remember one time someone actually told me that this happened. So maybe I should dig deeper and see if this is the whole story. Because if you don't have that comprehension or the critical thinking, you might not think to go look for something else or to even find an opposing point of view and try to create a debate for yourself to figure out what it is you believe or what you don't believe. There's so much information. If you don't know how to interpret that information and then figure out what it is that you're going to believe or stand for, like that can put you in a really hard place, especially when kids around that age are so subjected to lots of peer pressure and all of the misinformation that is out there now with the 4chanification of the internet.
yeah. And essentially, if our kids are learning to fall for or stand for nothing because, books aren't really teaching principles or morals or really anything good and well anymore, honestly. They're not really the same as they were. It's hard to find those books. They're few and far between. They're either just a very far-fetched fictional story or unfortunately a lot of children's books that are published and promoted and the biggest ones out there are done so to push an agenda of some sorts, which is unfortunate for our children to have to deal with that and to try to navigate that because that's not their job to know how to navigate that, right? They shouldn't be being fed an agenda from such a young age. And then you go to the internet side of things where there's agendas left and right, literally left and right, and middle and center and left of center, right of center, all these different places where these agendas and opinions and thought processes come from. And if you're part of one, you're right. And then to the other people, you're wrong. If you're with them, you're right. But then the other people say you're wrong. And there's extremists on both sides. And it's just a mess. It's a mess even for us adults to try to navigate through, right? Like,
Yes.
it's confusing. Like, the internet is confusing. It's difficult. It's a big, scary place. The internet's almost scarier than the real world today at this
Yes.
point. It's crazy, but that's kind of where it is. When you think about it, it comes down to it, is that it's bigger and scarier on the internet, and our kids have access to it at a young age, and they're encouraged to go about it at such a young age. Like Chromebooks and things like that are introduced in first, second grade,
Yes.
right? I
And I used
remember.
to,
Oh, go ahead.
because I used to teach like technology before I went to the technology department. And I did K through 6 literacy, computer literacy. They would come in kindergarten, first grade, all the way to 6th grade. And I would teach them like just basic skills with troubleshooting. Like they would have to come in and figure out, hey, my keyboard's not working. Like, how do I fix this? And then see the different ports in the back of the computer. I do love that challenges some of their problem solving skills, but I do think it's really important to teach kids how to use something and when we use it, how to use it responsibly. And that's a lot of what I did before I worked at the district level, because now, I mean, kids are handed phones as babies and they're just like, stare at this, it's a pacifier, it's not a tool.
Yeah, and there's a big difference between teaching a kid how to use it and just giving a kid unlimited access to it. And that's where we come in as parents, right? That's our job, is to teach them how to use these things. It's like the whole AI is a great example of this, right? AI is like the perfect example, the first example that's coming to mind for me, right? There's AI, yes, it's scary. Everyone either has their side on it, they're in or they're out. Thankfully, it's just in or out right now. But unfortunately, if you're not with it, then you're falling behind. Every week you're falling a version behind. You're falling behind somewhere. Like, you're not keeping up on the AI trends of the world, right? And so with AI, there's plenty of AIs out there. You go to ChatGPT, you can explore 100 different GPTs. Heck, you can create your own GPT. I want to create GPTs for my job to make my job easier. I want to find GPTs about the Bible, so I can just ask the GPT a question and it can tell me 10 verses about these things. I don't know if that one exists. It probably won't work because GPT has its pre-programmed things and whatnot, but it's open source, it's AI, it's really cool. That aside, AI can write papers, it can provide you all these things, but those papers, very obvious that they're not human, right? But there's also a humanizer AI to make it sound more human. So you can write it into one AI, then you can plug it into the next AI to make it more human, and then you can plug it into your Google Doc, and then you can read through it and edit it a little bit, and you're beating the scores in the system a little bit. It's possible. So that's the do it for you method. Or there's the method with AI, to where my brother and I were working on this other project, like I was telling you about pre-show a little bit, and I had the lamest ideas for the name of this project. Like, the lamest ideas. They were basic, they were boring, they were bland. So, I went to AI. I'm like, give me 10 names for what I can name this concept of this project. And that gave me 10 ideas. Did we use any of those 10 ideas? No. But did it give us like a very powerful like name and concept for our project? Absolutely, because it got us thinking. That's how we use it as a tool. We use it to help fuel our thought process, because it's very easy to get blocked. That creative juices don't always run. They're not always running. It's hard. They only can go so far. But where AI can come in for ourselves and for our children is for my daughters when she's doing research. Let's say she's researching golden retrievers, right? And I can pull up AI. Okay, give me 5 sources about golden retrievers. Tell me about golden retrievers from 0 to 1 year old. what are their habits and things like that, break down their stages of life, being able to use the AI to help me or to help my child be able to understand, oh, okay, this is cool because she can read, she can pick up on those things and figure it out. She can type on a keyboard and prompt it, and I can teach her and guide her how to prompt it, how to use it, how it can benefit her, right? That's how we can
Right.
teach them to use it as a tool. That's what we have to do with technology, phones especially. There's some great companies out there. I was listening about one today on the art of fatherhood. It's called Gab, Gabb. What they
Mm.
do is they're a communication company, but they create different stages of phones for different ages, right? Because the creator, the CEO understands, like, okay, it's inevitable that my kids are going to get a smartphone, right? But I'm going to get in front of this at an early age, and I'm going to create a phone or a company to where these phones are preloaded for different ages. And so you graduate from phone to phone to phone, or the child does, but it teaches them like the responsibility of having that phone. So they're limited to certain apps and different things. And as they graduate from phone to phone, a little bit more gets unlocked, a little bit more gets unlocked. And it's always monitored because it can be really hard as parents to monitor it all the time. But these phones are specific. They're not a sponsor. I would love if they would be. Nate, if you're listening to this or you get sent this clip, I might send it to you. I would love to talk a little bit further about that, but regardless, it's really cool. So there are companies and things out there that exist to help us with these problems, but you have to be extremely mindful as a parent. You have to teach our children how to use these tools, just like we have to teach them how to use a bathroom, make their bed, brush their teeth, their hygiene, their sleep habits, all the things, right?
It's true. AI should just be a co-pilot in
Hmm.
whatever it is that you're trying to figure out. It's definitely great to help your creative like juices start flowing. I use it all the time when I want to like organize my thoughts a little bit better, and it makes it a lot easier for me because I jump around when I write sometimes. So then
Hmm.
I'll ask it to organize my thoughts in a better order, and then I can rewrite it or add information from there. So I love AI so much.
No, it's great, especially for us. Like I've written a children's book. I have another one I'm working on as well. Uh, and other concepts and ideas that I have on random sticky notes in different places and things like that. But sometimes you get stuck and you're like, okay, what's a word that rhymes with this word? Or how can I? Maybe you're writing it a little bit too like teenagery, right? How can I kid this down a little bit to make it sound more common for second graders, specifically if I'm writing
Right.
something specifically for a second grader? How can I do these different things and attack these different demographics? And so AI is a great assistant in all that.
It definitely is. And your children's book is about sports, right? It's like a baseball book?
Yeah, so it's a baseball game with dad. And but my baseball game with dad book, it's from the child's perspective. So it's from the perspective of the child about going to the baseball game with dad and about how cool that experience is to be with dad and different. It's not just about one, like, you don't see the same character throughout the book. There's a couple common characters that are seen multiple times throughout the book, but different. Every page looks a little bit different. Um, I have a copy nearby to give an example. Where are my copies? Anyways, but no, every page looks just a little bit different to where there's different dads on different pages, different shapes, sizes. There's uh, a kid in a wheelchair to kind of hit on the disabilities thing. So it's very inclusive book because baseball is a very inclusive sport. But it's all written from the child's perspective. Uh, and it's from like if me and my daughters were going to a baseball game, but it's all written from like their point of view. So it's really cool and unique in that aspect. And that's one thing I love about kind of books I want to do. I want to do them all from that like perspective of the child, like how cool it is to go to a baseball game with your dad and how cool it is to spend that one-on-one time. And the dad in the story picks up his daughters from their mom's house, and so
Mhm.
it very depicts the co-parenting as well. So I hope a lot of different kids can resonate with this book in some kind of form, so they can kind of see themselves like, oh, I look like that, or that's my skin color, or that's my body type, or that's my situation, or different things like that. So those are the hope with kind of the books that I write and with the pictures and story I try to capture.
I love that. I love that. And my books are a little bit different, but I do have the same goals as you. A couple of my books have main characters that look like my daughter just because, like, I wanted to have that for her. And
Of course.
then one of my favorite series is called If Shapes Could Talk. So my biggest thing for that was because they're shapes and they don't have genders, they don't necessarily have to have names, but they can all have stories that are different. So I try to use those books to teach diversity when it comes to like tons of different topics like envy and eating healthily, and then one that's also about like different forms of adoption. So um, I'm hoping that people see it for what it is instead of like making it something that it's not. Because I've had some people upset that characters don't have names. I've had some people upset that adoption is mentioned. Like, you can never write for everybody,
No.
but I do try to make them really, I want kids to be able to relate with the story, not necessarily
Mhm.
look and see themselves as a character, if that makes sense. Like, anybody could be a purple rhombus.
Right. No, and I think that's important too, to where at the same time kids need those things though, right? Kids need, something to relate to, something to say, I feel like that, or that purple rhombus reminds me of myself. Like that's kind of me. I'm the purple rhombus in a little bit, right? Or, I'm this character in this book, or I am kind of like Miles Morales, or I'm kind of like Captain America, or I'm Black Panther, or I'm Wonder Woman, or I know I was going Marvel heavy there. Sorry, threw in
Yeah.
DC. Okay, we're good. I'm a Marvel guy. I'm sorry, I gotta say that. But also like for boys too, like athletes are a big one that a lot of boys aspire to be like. They aspire to be like their favorite athlete. Growing up in the Pacific Northwest, growing up here in Washington, during the Ken Griffey Jr. days, the Ichiro days, the Egger days, Felix days, we had some great, great, great generational talent, generational players on the Seattle Mariners that we all wanted to be like. We all did the Ichiro thing with the hand over the shoulder, pulling up the sleeve, like we all did the Felix, like pitching rotation. Like we all did the same things because that's who we looked up to. That's who we wanted to be like because like these guys are the coolest, right? We didn't hold them on a pedestal. They're still humans, but maybe some of my friends did. I didn't. There's only one person I put on a pedestal, and that's God and our Savior, of course. But after that, it's nobody. So for sports, so like these are like who we're looking up to, who we're modeling our games after. Every professional athlete has that. You see interviews of guys getting drafted into the NBA today. Oh, my game's like LeBron. My game's like D Wade, or my game's like this. That's who I model my game after. And then LeBron, okay, my game was modeled after MJ, Kobe, MJ, and so on and so forth. Every generation kind of had their somebody, right, who they looked up to. Every generation has those core figures, right? Those core beings as reference from like the Deadpool Wolverine movie. There's always that core being in everyone's universe. When that
Right.
person leaves, like your universe kind of falls apart, it seems. But uh, kids especially got to have those. Got to have something to relate to, something to look up to, because stories are about feeling, right? They're about feeling something, relating to something, relating to someone about something that you can grasp onto, because then you start to be able to process your own stuff. If the purple rhombus is sad, oh, I feel sad sometimes too. What does a purple rhombus do? Oh, I can try what the purple rhombus does. Or I'm adopted. Okay, that's not abnormal. I'm still normal. I still fit in with the other
Right.
shapes. I'm not different at all, right? Oh, my like for my book. Oh, my parents I go between my mom's and my dad's. These kids in this book go between their mom and that's really not that weird. It's not a big deal. I still have fun with my dad, and I still get to go to a baseball. Like I go to baseball games too. Like it's super fun. So finding those common things to relate to is super important for kids, and it helps them be able to take what they're learning in the book and apply it to real life. And those real life applications are so important.
They are. And that's why I feel like books should be used as a tool as well. Like, not just electronics, but books are so easily used to start a dialogue on a ton of things. Your kid wants to learn about dinosaurs, get a book about dinosaurs. You want to teach your kid about money, get a book about money. Like, it's just such a great bonding experience, being able to sit, read, and then discuss it. I feel like people should dive more into that activities that could be correlated to the book, not just read the book and put it down. Like, reading a story is great, but use that story and expand off of it, like almost like a mini homeschool session.
Yeah, and there's a lot of ways to do that, right? Like, if you read a book about trains or something, right? Go down to the train station and maybe ride a train to the next town over and just back or something. Or if you live in a big city like Oakland, shout out to my hometown, jump on the BART and go to the next stop over and go back. You're experiencing a train, right? And then you can take it even further. What did you see on the train? What did you smell on the train? What did you hear on the train? What did I said hear, smell, see? Hopefully they're not tasting anything on the train. What did you feel on the train? Like what could you touch on the train? Did the metal feel cold? Was it warm? Was the seat cold? Was the seat warm? And you can turn it into a whole experience. And then those experiences get more and more comfortable because they know what to expect. And they know that it's normal to go and do those things. Maybe it's bus rides. Maybe it's um, whatever it might be that you're trying to introduce to your child. Books are a great way to introduce new things to your children. Maybe it's a book about vegetables. Maybe it's about eating. Maybe it's about um, being a big sister or a big brother or all these different things, right? Their books have endless options. And guess what? Your public library, they're all free. They don't cost you anything to go down to your public library and pick up a library card. And guess what? If you don't know the Dewey Decimal System, because I mean, honestly, who does? Except for maybe Rella. You look like you maybe know the Dewey Decimal System by heart. Um, but outside of that, I don't. I can speak for myself at least. The Dewey Decimal System's hard, but guess what? The librarians, they're more than happy to help you. That's literally why they're there. So don't be afraid to ask and learn how to use the resources that the library has, because the library in itself is a great resource too.
It is. It's really the libraries have transformed almost into like community centers. There's
Mhm.
so many amazing things at the library. I just took my daughter to a BMX show at the library where they had two professional BMX like bike racers doing all these flips and tricks just as part of the library summer program. I was like, this is incredible. But something that you said about bringing your kids to an experience after you expose them already to the book and then asking them more about like how they're feeling or what they're thinking, um, and all of their different senses. At that point you're also teaching them mindfulness too, and it's not something that they have to consciously think about, but that's really helpful for them to just be inside of themselves and observe what's around them.
Yeah, no, and it's important to relate it back to real life, right? And then to apply it to get that retention and then that further comprehension to relay it into real life and to practice that continued learning. Because it's not just a one stop, like, okay, you read it, cool, throw it away, great. No, it's just continue, like, let's continue this dialogue. Let's continue learning because that's a big part of parenting, right? Is that, yes, our children go to school for 7, 8 hours a day for 9 months out of the year, but where are they for for that all 365 days for at least 16 hours on those all 365 days a year? They're at home with us. And
Right.
so that learning, the education has to continue. And being able to continue that education at home is huge. And I love what you said about how priests or libraries are turning into like community centers. I just want to show my local libraries, Mid Columbia libraries here. And because huge shout out to my local libraries. They're great. But just look at these upcoming events. Like this was today. Like all this stuff went on today at the library.
Wow.
And then this is what's going on tomorrow. Like food truck tales.
Ooh, food
Like
trucks.
like down at one of the food truck hubs, there's gonna be reading stories at the food trucks.
Yes, that's amazing.
Bring your own book club. Like that's in one of the outer city from not where I live, but like close by and stuff. And there's just so many things going on. And look, they have recommendations. If you don't know what to read, look at all these. This is a really good one, Atomic Habits. And
Hmm.
there's so many things here, like flyers and book clubs and back to school collections, like summer reading challenges and the menu. Like there's events. Look at all those community events, elementary event, book sales, reads, preschool programs, reading challenges, story times. Like there's just so many things going on. Like look at this calendar.
Right.
Like that's crazy.
You could spend all day at the
Like
library. And you can
Yeah,
learn
and
so
there's
much. We have a 3D printing lab at our library, a green screen room, a podcasting class. Like, it's amazing. Hydroponics.
yeah, I saw a library, I wanna say it was in Texas, has a full podcast studio, like a full-length podcast studio. Me, with our work with my work and the program I work in, we often utilize the libraries for meeting spaces to meet with families because it's a very comfortable, it's a very quiet place. They're very accessible because there's a lot of libraries, they're easy to get to, they're safe, they're reliable. We just call like an hour ahead. Hey, can I use a meeting room here in an hour? Sure, no problem. This is so and so. Like, cool. This is me from this agency. I'll be there at 4. What room? Room 3. Cool. We have it unlocked. Yep. Cool. Great. Boom. Done. 5 minutes. I have a room booked for whatever I need to do. So libraries are they're so cool. They're such a great resource to use and get out to the community here. And then involving your kids in all this is so great. So one thing I wanted to ask you about, so if the listeners are unfamiliar with it, just for transparency here, I ask all my guests who come onto the podcast and every conversation I have, I ask them a little questionnaire, send them a little questionnaire. I'm like, tell me some things about you. Let me see how you think, things like that. We're still gonna have a conversation, but help me make this conversation more about things you mentioned. And something you mentioned that I'm a little unfamiliar with. I have an idea of what it is, but elimination communication. Can you
I love.
elaborate on this a little bit?
Yes, of course. It's something that I love. I really, really want to have another baby, so I would do it again. But basically, elimination communication is making yourself available to understand your child's cues, and it's not potty training. So basically, the way that it worked for me is I had my daughter, and she was very, very chunky. So at 4 months, she could sit up. So I would put her on the potty every morning once she could sit up, and I would just put her on the potty, let her sit there for a couple like minutes. Sometimes she didn't do anything, and I'd take her off. I'd put her diaper back on, but she knew every time she woke up, I would take her diaper off and I'd put her on the potty. And some people start at birth; they start like holding them so they can eliminate into the little like top hat potty or something like that. But sometimes
Okay.
you'll see when you watch your child, when they're about to poop, they scrunch their nose or they make a certain noise. So it's about being really cognizant of understanding what's happening in your child's body so you can eventually let them know what's happening, and they have a schedule and they normally have cues. So for my daughter, I did signs and noises like we're about to leave. I put her on before we leave, and then when we got somewhere, I'd put her on the potty again when we got there. And it was always the same routine. So my daughter was pretty much like potty trained by the time she was 14 months, like nighttime and daytime. Um, and she was consistently going at least like number 2 in the potty by the time she was like 7 months. I was so happy that I didn't have to change very many poopy diapers because, like, I don't know who enjoys that necessarily, but I don't.
Nobody.
Like, she
Nobody.
still
No,
peed in
nobody.
the diaper, and that's fine. But some people say, like, oh, that's not natural. You shouldn't do that. But that's what a lot of other countries do. Like culturally, they don't always have a bathroom. And it's beautiful for you to have a relationship with your child where they know they can like trust in you to be able to take care of themselves almost. So she started being able to sign back and to use the cues back, like when she wanted to go. And so that's before she could even talk. Like, that's amazing.
That is so okay, elimination literally means going to the bathroom. Okay.
Hmm.
That makes more sense. But I feel like this is so applicable in so many other areas, right? Because
Yes.
you're able to pick up on, you become more in touch with your child, right? You become more in touch with their cues and with the things that they're saying without saying, right? Because last time I checked, babies don't start talking for a hot minute. Um, Right? And so, but being able to pick up on their cues and being able to teach them cues and being able to teach them these habits and teach them, like, as they're growing up and whatnot, right? Like, they know transition time is a time where I need to use the bathroom, or this is time for a transition or something like that. And I need to do these
Right.
things. So being able for them to be aware and being in touch with their child to know their needs, that's really cool. So that's really unique. That's really cool. I don't think that's should be taboo at all. I can definitely see how it can be like, oh, don't do that. It's unnatural. Blah 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 blah. Facebook mom groups, of course, they're probably
Exactly.
all, keyboard warriors and all that. all that fun stuff. That's the cool thing about dads groups is that like the best dads group out there, like by far on Facebook, is the Bandits, the Bluey dad group out there. It's fantastic. Just a bunch of dads. It's all Bluey themed. It's fantastic. We refer to
Fun.
our kids as Blueys and Bingos and Muffins and our significant others as chilies and things like that, and it's super great. And then we have also like Featherwood, which is one for like support and things like that, and we have another one for like adventure stuff, and it's really cool, like the different how it's like branched out from this initial group. So it's really cool. So it's by far the best one. And it's great because when it comes to potty training and talking about this stuff in there, it's like, hey, y'all think my kid's ready to potty train? He's taking off his diaper and staring at me when I pee, and he's trying to do the same while he's like standing up next to the toilet, but he's doing it in his diaper. Y'all think he's ready? And it's like, yeah, the comments are just great, and it's just memes and gifs and everything, and it's like so lighthearted and stuff. So that's the big difference between like mom and dad groups on Facebook, is that we're gonna roast you a little bit and razz you up a little bit, but at the same time, like it's like, yeah, man, like yeah, he's ready. Go, yeah, start potty training him.
Aw,
Like he's good. He's good.
I
Throw some
love it.
Cheerios in the toilet. Target practice. He'll be good in a week. Kind of thing. It's all over the place. Everyone has like their different things in there, so it's really cool. Another thing that you mentioned here that I wanted to touch on just briefly is you mentioned postpartum depression, and this because I was recently in this same dad's group, but I was in the Featherwood, the support aspect of it, and a post just pops up because you know how the Facebook algorithm will just post up random posts. But I saw this one of this anonymous dad posting in this group saying, I hate being a dad. I hate being a dad. It's all these things. Like I'm not sleeping. And all these things. Like I lost interest. I lost all my friends. All these things, right? And I commented because I'm like, bro, like you really need to go talk to someone and talk to a mental health professional because before this thing gets worse and this spirals, but you're having some postpartum depression. Like you're having postpartum depression, like in the full extent here. A bunch of other guys agreed with me and backed it and were like, I hope the original poster sees this comment and takes it under like their consideration and blah 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 blah. And it was really cool to see the support for it. That I wasn't like just shooting out something like that because I'm not just gonna throw that around. But postpartum
Right.
depression, like it's really not seen as like a real or legitimate because you just had a baby. You should be so happy, kind of thing, right? Like
Yeah.
you have a baby, you have a family, like be happy, kind of thing. And it's different, and I'm sure you can speak to it at a higher level than I can. But especially in African American culture, I'm only part African American. I'm biracial, and so growing up, it was a split household between my African American side of the family and then my stepmother's Latino side of the family. So it was quite the dynamic growing up. And then there's me. So how I fit into all that is its own story in itself, but it's not always seen as something important or real or something that we're going to talk about. It's kind of be like, well, let's gotta move on.
Right.
And it's not just in African American culture either. It's
No.
in uh, a lot of cultures. It's runs rampart in our society, gender wise, sexuality wise, ethnicity wise. Like it's in all aspects. So, if you wouldn't mind, what made you put this one on the questionnaire here to talk about today a little bit?
Yeah, I'm just an open book, and it's part of my life that I have experienced, and I didn't really see it until I was outside of it. And I kind of thought when I was going through it, like, this could be problematic. Like maybe I'm sad, or like maybe I have a little bit of postpartum depression. But when I would talk to someone or try to say like, hey, I think like I'm not feeling how I should feel. Like I'm just going through the motions. I don't care to do anything else. Like the only reason I get up is for my daughter. I feel like people were just kind of like, oh, well, you know, you got to do what you got to do. Or like, you
Yep.
got this. And I feel like there's a really big, like, you can do it, mama culture where everybody's like, you got this. Like, it's okay. But they're not offering any support, any help, nothing. They're like, I'm going to watch you and I'm going to make sure you get through this, but like from way over here. I'm not going to come
Yeah.
over to help you do your dishes. I'm not going to come and hold the baby. Like, it. it's so isolating already. And then to
Mhm.
not have support, I feel like, the village that once was there to raise children is just not there. Like geographically,
Mhm.
people are all over the place. Grandparents are very much into living their own lives now because there's just so much more
Mhm.
to do. And
Mhm.
there's just like a big disconnect. And then people also discount your feelings and tell you, you can do this. Like, I'll get you a coffee and you'll be fine. So
Right?
it's that.
Yeah, it's that hustle mindset, right? It's that hustle, keep hustling, keep moving, keep going. Like, well, yeah, you're doing it for your daughter because yeah, you have to keep going. Just keep doing it, kind of thing. So it's interesting. Hi. She just needed a little extra little kiss there. She just needed an extra little hug.
Sorry. It's hard. I think one of the biggest things too is like, sorry. I think one of the biggest things too is it being like American culture. Like we work until we die.
Yeah, it's a
Like
hustle
other
culture.
cultures. Sorry.
It's hustle culture, like it's all about that grind. It's all about hustling. It's all about making your bag. Work, 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 work. And our country's programmed us to work until we're dead or dying.
Right. Right. And it's
So
sad. It's so sad. That's lots of the reason why some grandparents can't be there is because they're still working, because they can't retire yet, because of just the way everything is. So, yeah, I feel like anybody that's dealing with that should definitely reach out to someone they feel like can help. And they, if they want, like they can probably find lots of resources in libraries, like for counseling or churches. There's so many different resources that are out there.
yeah, no, there's tons of resources out there, and it doesn't just start after you have the baby, right? It doesn't just start right after you have the baby. It doesn't start later. It can like be more prominent, right? Like those feelings get more prominent. But unfortunately, like we don't live in a country that cares about preventative medicine at all, really. And those doctors that do care about preventative medicine are, for lack of a better term, blackballed in the medical community
And
and they're
insurance
kicked
doesn't
out.
cover it.
Yeah, right? No, insurance doesn't cover it. Like preventative medicine is not a thing. It's all about reactive medicine. And so yeah, your OB or your midwife may say, well, you may start to feel these symptoms of postpartum depression. If you do, let me know. If not, then cool. Are you feeling any? No. Okay, cool. And they just give you a handout, say look out for these symptoms, and say you're on your merry way. They give it to the mother. They don't give it to the father at all, right? Uh, like ever. But those symptoms are going to be the same. The same that are for you are going to be the same that I'm going to have, right? As a father, and so those symptoms were probably there from the beginning, and then they just progressively get worse until like you wake up that one day and you're like, holy shit, I'm really, really sad. Like this is
Yeah.
really hard. Like I'm only doing this because I got to keep my daughter alive and my kids alive, but I'm not doing this for me. Like, yeah, coffee is great, but I can barely freaking function. I'm only washing the dishes I have to wash so we can eat. I'm only washing the clothes I have to wash so I have clean underwear to wear. I'm only doing the stuff I have to do at the bare minimum to do because I have to do it. And like you said, those people who are supposed to be there aren't there. And it's that silent struggle. And it's unfortunate because like by the time it's time to react, sometimes unfortunately it's too late, whether it's the mother's life or the child's life that's already been majorly impacted in some way, shape, or form.
Hmm.
Maybe not up into including death, but in the worst of cases, yeah, up into that point as well. It gets there. But we don't treat it because it's not part of American medicine to offer, any kind of preventative care or to check in on that kind of thing, which is why it's so important to have those conversations, to talk about them, to be more about them kind of thing. So,
It's very
um,
true. It can cause so many attachment issues in your children, and in your partner as well, like
mhm.
both ways. It's really hard to feel heard and seen because both of you could be going through it at the same time. And sometimes women are very introspective at that time, like only really worrying about them and their child, like not really their partner. So I can totally see how there's just so much friction and like miscommunication in those situations, and it just doesn't make anything better. It's really hard, and people should be given more support, especially going into it. Like when I left the hospital with my baby, I was like, cool. Like they really just let you take them home, then that's it.
Yeah, they make sure they poop and there's no jaundice anymore and there's not anything major going on. And it's like, yeah, you go, you here's some papers, you know, here's a couple diapers, here's 2 pads for you, mom, and a little spray bottle to keep yourself clean and whatnot. But, you have an appointment in 2 days, and you have another one in 5 days, and you have another one in a week, and, you know, at least there's, some care for the baby and whatnot, but there's no care for you. There's no care for, the father. There's no care for the parents of these children, and, that's where we go wrong, is that we're not preventing, we're not putting in these skills, we're not putting in these resources and whatnot. Um, and it sucks. And one thing that I really want to figure out is how I can be part of the solution. How can this podcast be part of that solution through a bigger conversation? Like, how are we going to be part of that solution? How are we going to be part of that, those points forward? How are we going to move these needles in the direction that they need to move? That's a bigger question here, but that's, what we're after to try to find out.
Right. I feel like bringing awareness to it is already step one.
100%. But then once we get to step 1, how do we get to step 2? How do we actually take that awareness and turn it into something actionable? And that's, that's a bigger question. That's the mission I'm on, to try to figure out how we take these things from the awareness stage to a little bit something more actionable to make them happen, so we can make that difference and have these lasting changes around us, so that not just my children, your children are benefited of it because we understand it, but so that the children I see playing across the street, the children I hear down the street, the children I see at the park, so that all of us, all these children, our next generation, are in these much better places for success. So,
You know what? Not I don't know if you were actually literally asking me that or if it was more figurative or
oh,
anything,
more
but
figurative. But if you have an idea,
yeah, just because like women have doulas, right? But I don't know if like
hmm
there's dad doulas, but that would be amazing.
that would be really cool to be able to
Hmm.
provide that, that support in that way. No, I don't think anything like that. I'm sure there are. I'm gonna have to look it up. I'm curious now.
Hmm.
But Rilla, we're gonna wrap this thing up here in a minute. But holy crap, what a conversation! From prison industrial complex to literacy to resources to elimination communication to postpartum depression. Like, we covered a great wide array of topics today. So there's plenty of value to be had from our episode today. So if you missed it, well, give it another listen. There's plenty here. Rilla, before we close, is there any final thoughts that you have before we close here?
No, I really appreciate you having me. If you're looking for any engaging content for your kiddos, whether it's visual or auditory, definitely check out relabybooks.com or Reading with Relaby. That'd be great.
And yeah, those are great resources there. Um, and of course, like I played at the beginning of this podcast, these Podbeat apps, that's fantastic. The one you heard at the opening of the podcast is the Lo-Fi beat. One of my favorite things about these is, really, when you're at the gym or you're on a walk or maybe you're on a run or maybe you're exercising some way, shape, or form, there's a lot of extra noise, right? And you're trying to hear like your book and you're trying to hear like your podcast, you're trying to get the message, but there's cars honking or there's people grunting or there's just that annoying music at the gym that's not very good, but they're trying so hard to pump you up. But guess what? Podbeat, turn it up, turn it up, turn it up. You can still hear what's going on. You can still hear the talking. And eliminate all that other noise, and it's fantastic. That's one of the things I love about Podbeat the most. I also love our other partners of the podcast, Four Fathers Apparel. Four Fathers is great for the best dad apparel in the game. I literally have the 1A. I work with the 1A and the 1B of dad apparel in the game here. Four Fathers is great for more formal wear. The polos, things like that. Four Fathers, fantastic. Movie night, game night, dog dad, all the different dadisms that we love, printed on polos, high performing materials. And there's so many new ones coming out and that have been coming out. So Four Fathers, great. Use the code Young Dad, you save 20%. Dad About Apparel, you use the code Young Dad, you save 15%. on great hats, great shirts, great tank tops. Support your local girl dad merch. It's fantastic. The June app, code YNGDID. Follow the direct to listener link in there. If your children struggle with habits, behaviors, routines, things like that, you've heard me talk about June 100 times. Go back and listen to episode 89 of the podcast, and you'll be able to find even more there. Outside of that, of course, Dr. Anthony Harrell. Why do I always forget Dr. Harrell? Dr. Harrell's fantastic. He's a doctor, physical therapist. He's gotten myself right with great strength training, a great program that I'm on to really help myself, my body, my unique needs and whatnot. Program tailored to me. It's fantastic. You can look up him there as well. And get a discount on his services. Outside of that, those are all some of the great ways to promote the podcast. So very last question for you here, Rella, is let's say a very young mom comes to you. Let's say she's, I don't know, 18 to 23, 24-ish, right? Super young. Just had her first baby. She's all the things, feeling all the things in once, right? She comes to you. She asks you for some advice. What's a couple of pieces of advice that you would offer her?
My main piece of advice that I'd offer her is to just give herself grace and time. Because if she isn't getting the support that she needs, maybe seek it elsewhere. And anything that she doesn't absolutely have to do, just focus on your baby and you. As long as you're healthy and happy, you guys will be okay. So don't sweat the small things and give yourself a ton of grace.
I love that.
Also
I love
create,
that. Same message. Oh, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, and creating like strong boundaries between your family and how they can and cannot talk to you. Because at any age, that's very important. And when you have your first baby, there's everybody that has all of their information and 2 cents they want to give you. And you just have to do what's best for you and your baby.
Yep, and everyone's suddenly an expert on child rearing, and everyone's suddenly an expert on everything you should and shouldn't do. So those are some great things, great piece of advice. Same can be given to the dad as well. Give yourself grace, give yourself that time. You're gonna figure it out. You're gonna fail. You're gonna struggle. It's gonna be hard. There's gonna be harder days. There's gonna be easier days. Go with the ebbs and flows. Go with the ups and downs, and hold those boundaries, especially with your family. Your family as well. If you're gonna want her to hold her with her family, you got to hold them with yours, and vice versa. Be willing to stand up for her as she's gonna stand up for you, and interchangeably there. So I love that. I love that. Of course, you can find Rella on all the social media platforms, and I love when guests come on and they have a one handle for all the things. That's at RELLABBOOKS, Rella B Books. You can find that on all the social medias: TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, LinkedIn, and Reddit. For all those at Rella B Books, RELLABBOOKS. And in the meantime, while you're out and about doing things on social media, finding Rella, stop by the Young Dad Podcast and give it a follow, subscription, like, follow, all the things. And show your love to Rella, show your love to myself. And we'll catch you next time right here on the podcast.